So hi everyone, thank you for coming. And my name is Yan Chen. My topic is real-time hair simulation and rendering. So here is the outline of my presentation. As we know, hair modeling is a very important component of virtual character, and is usually being avoided or simplified because of the complexity of the hair, and we don't have a very comprehensive physical model to simulate hair. So the hair modeling is divided into three categories: styling, simulation, and rendering. For the styling, it's about modeling the general shape of the hair.
Is that your picture? Is this picture from a poser or
It's others' work.
No, you have to put in brackets underneath where you got it from.
Okay.
You have to the source. You have to indicate that it comes from something. But you can possibly say it, since we're only two in this room, but the safe way is always to put the
Okay.
because otherwise we assume it's yours.
Okay. Then for the simulation, it's about the dynamic motion of the hair, and the rendering is calculate the final color and shadow of the hair. So our project goal is to create a framework that integrates hair styling, simulation, and rendering, and we will add the hair modeling to the iPath project. The iPath project is a project that uses real-time, high-quality rendering technique to render one of the open-source movie called Elephant Dream. So this gives us two requirements. We have to design a hairstyle for our character. Then we have to make sure our simulation is in real time. And here's many other methods to create a hair strain, to create a hairstyle. In this method, they use the NURB surface to represent the hair. They also can create the hairstyle from the photographs. However, these two methods didn't give the user too much control of the shape of the hair. So we adapt the method from the hair mesh. It's a method that allows users to create the hair model in the same way we create the polygon model. However, since the polygon model is only the surface of the model, the human being's hair is a volume rather than a surface. So this method allows us to construct the internal structure of the hair model. In this way, we can treat the hair as a volume rather than a surface. There are also many ways we can simulate the hair. In this method, they use the NURB surface to represent the hair. And here is the method called SuperHelix. It's probably the best simulation model up to date. It simulates the hair strain using the piecewise helix. However, this method was too complicated to implement in our project. So
Is it real time on the right?
no, it took about the only disadvantage of this method is that it hasn't been implemented on the GPU. So it took about 5 minutes to render one single frame.
When you say it's the best, why do you say it's the best?
It's most real compared to the real motion of the hair.
Is that your opinion, or is that something like everybody in the hair simulation?
Yeah,
agrees
right.
with that?
Yeah, it's from a survey. Yeah. So we took a method from the NVIDIA demo. As we know, human beings have more than 10,000 single hair strands, so it's impossible for us to simulate every individual of them. So our approach is to simulate 100 of the strands, work as a guide strand. It will guide the motion of the hair. Then we interpret the remaining hair to create the full hair model. And for the single hair strand, we will use the mass spring system to treat the hair strand as a chain of particles. And for hair rendering, it includes local illumination and self-shadowing. Because we didn't focus our work on the hair rendering, so we already implement the local illumination part. And here's the technology we are using for our work. It's DX11. It's the latest graphics API from Microsoft, and it consists of two components. One is the rendering pipeline, and the other is the computing pipeline. we will simulate our hair string on the computing pipeline and then transfer the data to the rendering pipeline. And one very key component of this rendering pipeline is the tessellation engine shown in the green block right here. We will use the tessellation engine to tessellate and interpret the remaining here as we've seen before to generate. And here's the preview of our implementation. First, we create our hairstyle in the 3D Max. Then we export the hair mesh into our program and convert those mesh into list of vertices will work as the guide string in our simulation. And then we simulate those guide strings. Finally, we'll interpret those guide strings and create a final result. And we start from hairstyling. We can start from a quad face that could be a quad face on the scalp of our head model. Then we extrude the quad face to create a cuboid. Then we can repeat this process for multiple times. Then we create a volume of our hair mesh. Now we can duplicate this volume for a number of times, or we can create other more volume of the hair mesh.
Why is this in two places? Why don't you just stretch through the quad face all the way up? What's the advantage of doing it 2 times here?
No, you can do it anytime you want.
Well, why not just do 1? I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, you can do 1.
So why?
No, but there's something to show them in the picture.
Yeah, you can subdivide. I mean, you can have 1 and then you can subdivide it.
Does that second block have to be also in the same direction with the first?
No, you can. I mean, you can use any tool to move the vertex anywhere you like, so that you can create a general style of the hair. Then we export the hair mesh into our program. Then we convert those meshes into lists of vertices. Will work as the guide string for our simulation. By considering all the phase along the extruding path, then we interpreting those 4 vertex on one single quad face to get a central vertex. Then we trace the path to get a list of vertices, and this list of vertices will work as a guide string.
You have perturbed it and suggested the middle one was simply moving sideways.
Right. As a recall for the GPU parallel computing, we have thousands of kernels that can run at the same time. Since we only run hundreds of the strings, and with a number of vertices on each string, so we can assign each guide string with a group. Then we assign each vertex on that string with a thread. That means we can run all the vertices in the same time. It's parallel computing. And here's the mass spring system for one single guide string. This is the algorithm for the one-time step simulation. First, we add the external forces like gravity or wind force. Then we repeat the number of times for the constraints. We have the distance constraint, angular constraint, and we also have a simple sphere collision. Finally, we integrate those forces and use the work that integration.
So the spheres around just the nodes, it's not along the entire string, but we talk about the collision constraint?
Collision constraint is like a sphere that take over the head model so that it prevents the hair string go through the hair model.
It's just hair.
Yeah, right. It's not in hair. So consider now we have a guide string, and there's a distance constraint that prevents 2 neighboring vertices getting too close to each other or getting too far to each other by adding opposite forces. And we have an angular. However, we could not apply those constraints for all the vertices in the same time, because one vertex is constrained to the vertex before it and also the constraint after it. So we have to split the vertices in 2 groups and then apply a constraint in 2 steps. And here is the result for the simulation of the guide string. Once we have the simulation of the guide string, we can integrate those guide strings and to generate more hair strings to create a full hair model. How can we do that? We use the method called single string based interpolation. We consider now we have a guide string, then we generate random vectors, and then we duplicate this guide string to create more hair string. How can we do that? We do that in the tessellation engine. The tessellation engine has three components: Hall shader, tessellator, and the domain shader. Our input is the vertices on the one single guide stream. Then in the Hall shader, we'll compute the two tessellation factors. One is the number of streams. That's how many new streams we want to create. And the number of line segments will define how smooth we want our stream to be. And then we generate this topology in a tessellator. Then we send this information to our domain shader. However, if nothing was done in the domain shader, here's what we have for the output. Obviously, we don't want something like separate line segments for our hair. So what we do is use a C1 continuous Karl-Malone spline. As we recall the Karl-Malone spline, we have 4 control points to define one line segment. And the position of those control points we can get from the input. All we need is a parameter. In the domain shader, we have a parameter U and V. U is defined by the number of streams. That's how many new streams we want to create. And V is defined by the number of line segments. That means the larger the number, the smoother our result will be. So here's what we have if we use the Karl-Malone spline. We have much smoother streams than before. However, our lines are our output are lines which are not good enough for us, because in a rendering process, the lines are too small and it causes problems like aliasing. So we have the geometry shader to turn those lines into chords, so that we can render those chords using the Katia and Kai model by computing the hair tangent, field vector, and light vector to calculate the final color of our hair string. And here's the demo for the final result. We have those hair string following the motion of the head model. And in this demo, it runs more than 200 guide strings with 10 or more vertices on each string. And then the running time will close to 120 frames per second. That's very fast. So for the conclusion, I think one very important part of our program is that the flexibility of this framework. We can create any hairstyle we want for our character. And then, since we are using the shader program, so it's very convenient for us to replace any stage of our program, our framework. For example, if we want to implement the super helix model, we can implement it on the computing pipeline, then replace our original simulation components by using our newer simulation model. Then we can have more rendering technique. For example, we can create the shadows for our hair string to generate a more real result. And that's the end. Thank you.
So you say you can put in any sort of hairstyle. Can you talk about which hairstyles you think will do well, but which ones would not do well in your system?
I think the longer the hair is the better, because the more hair strength, the more vertices you have, the real the result will be. And for like longer than the head model, we still need more like collision spheres for the body of the model. So.
Do you want to venture a guess why the Lola model is done as a learner in water?
I mean, why it's in the water?
Yeah, why is it in water?
I don't know.
Well, look at the hair.
Because of the force in the water.
Well, that is one thing. The other thing is that there are too many collisions with the body, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the hard part. And of course, this might be self-intersecting, but we wouldn't be able to tell.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one thing, because you don't have the force of gravity that's going to force more collisions. between hair strands and stuff. Right? So I saw this movie called Tangled. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
You haven't seen that movie?
No.
Isn't Harrison Lee Hansen Tangled? Tangled, the Disney movie. New York? It's a year, yeah, it's only a year and a half, or even a year and a half old. It's won a lot of awards, so it's not an obscure one. But I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about how did they do theirs, Tangled with Disney.
Is that the word?
That's fine. And you go to,
No, I haven't seen it.
so click on video. Yeah, okay, good.
7 a.m. the usual morning lineup. Start on the chores and sweep till the floor's all clean.
So this is based on the
Polish and
story,
wax, do
basically,
laundry and buff and shine up.
children's story of Rapunzel, right? So it started really long time. So I mean, do you have any thoughts about it? How did they do theirs? How does that compare to? I know this is not real time. So
Yeah, right.
That's making it. This is a commercial grade thing that people have seen.
There are many different hair styling models, simulation model also. Depends on how they will simulate. The model I use, the mask screen model, is probably the simplest one. They could use like a wisp or like what they call the surface. So probably they just render only the surface of the hair. So
They're pretty complex. You might want to. I know this is a little unfair because this is the first time you saw this video right now. But
okay.
I think having an email from you afterwards, after you have a chance to look at it, maybe to see what this is. Because this would be considered the gold standard. I mean, this is being made for $1 billion. And that the hair rendering on here was actually a PhD dissertation that came out a few years ago. So she actually got hired by Disney to do the hair from Hank. So it would be good for you to just to see how they did something. That's something that's actually commercially viable approach. And actually, if you've seen the movie Frozen, which that daughter, my daughter sings all the time, the hair, the number of strands in that hair is also by Disney is I think 10 times or more strands than this. But the evolution of hair strands, or even a commercial movie, went an order of magnitude higher than this, even in 1 year of movie production. So you see the movie Frozen, that 10 times hair strands. I think it's just good just for you to say, hey, how does yours, a real time, which is different, I know, than these sort of movie-based ones. It'd be good just for you to send an email to say, hey, I took a look at those algorithms, I kind of understand how they went about doing it, and here's just a little bit of compare and contrast to how you go about it with real time.
Okay. Also, we don't have the shadows, so it may not look as real as the commercial one.
Yeah, I understand. There's the shadow, there's also the animation involved.
Yeah, right.
They've got a lot of physics that you can see. In the movie, her hair interacts with a lot of objects in the scene, and there's a lot of self-intersections. And the papers that she did publish on this were quite interesting for self-intersections.
Okay.
So you have 240 strands, 120 frames a second. Most needs to go down to, especially since you're rendering for a movie, 30 frames a second, right?
Yeah.
So how many frames could you have done, and how much more real did that hair have looked on that old man?
I mean, you can create as many as you want.
Right. So how many do you think you could have done?
You want to create. The one I create. If you can see the. We can make like a double of this time, so that we can.
So if you doubled it, would you go down to 60 frames, or would you still be, how many frames a second? You had 480.
I think it's probably close to like 70 frames per second.
70.
Yeah, it's still very fast. because because we have thousands of kernels can run at the same time. So if we
You weren't making use of all the kernels yet.
no, not yet.
So how many frames would you run if your benchmark was 30 frames per second?
I think close to like 1,600 maybe.
Seven times the number of frames you should. So why didn't you render him that many frames? Why do you do it?
Because we still need the IPass project. The IPass project originally run like 70 frames per second. So after we add in the hair strain, we want to keep that way so it doesn't go down like to 30 frames per second. And we still want to add the hair shadow. The hair shadow costs a lot of computing time too.
So everything combined was 30 frames per second?
No, not yet.
So 7.
Yeah, it should be.
The more interesting thing is, how to the hair itself, whether it's collision detection, or whether it's simple. What's the trick? Once you get real collision detection and all of that, then there's a lot of it.
Yeah, I think we don't have the hair-to-hair collision, which is also the disadvantage of using this model, because they doesn't provide that method for that.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised when you said the longer the hair, the better the look. Because it's like more opportunity. Like if you modeled my hair, it did pretty well.
Yeah, but I mean, your hair doesn't move much if you shake the head. So
yeah, exactly. That's why it would work well.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good. I mean, if you have very long hair, you've got more collision that you're not simulating. Especially if my wife's got long hair down here, and the hair bumps into each other. So I think, can you go back to the video of it playing? And my question is,
you mean the?
not this one. Most avatars, I think he's absolutely right. I mean, most of them, they try to do simpler hairstyles, in your bow. They make it short. They make it short. They make it, if they don't, then a lot of it will do a very straightforward set of claws. A lot of the looks that you have there. It really feels like a bunch of cloth, right? It's almost like a toupee, a bad toupee. It's almost like a cloth.
So they do model it separately. They don't just texture it on.
If there's any moving hair, it will be pretty much a light mass string model. Yeah. But there they have artists that spend a lot of time doing the white shading, so you hide a lot of it in the texture. Right? So that way you So okay, so in this video, if you were to spend, let's say, another 6 more months working on this, I'm not saying you will on
Yeah, that sounds good.
if you do, what would you do to make it look better?
First is the shadow. I think that makes a lot of difference. And then I create a different hairstyle, which this hairstyle looks like this. And then I think there's also, rather than single strain based interpolation, we also have multi-strain based interpolation. So those hair strains will not like a wisp. So it's like more random variables inside. So we want to see like this one. You can clearly see that was generated from one single guide strain.
How would you make the chin hair look better? Because the chin hair, you
This
see
one?
how it doesn't feel like it's attached to the chin at all.
Yeah, because after tessellation, the area actually bigger than the.
How would you make it look better?
I mean, probably reduce the number of the interpolation here. Because I model it was white, but after interpolation, I mean, I create a random vector, so it actually go out of the model. So it doesn't look that well.
You should probably do it a different stiffness.
What?
The goatee should have a different stiffness, the hair stiffness.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's not really collision. You might also think about, it feels like the scalp is made out of plastic.
Yeah, we are using only a simple sphere, so it may not cover all the region of the head
No,
model.
no, no. It's not that. You're still bumping into the sphere, so you don't collide into the sphere. But the way, see how it moves along the surface is very. It's almost like the head is made out of glass, right? It's not made out of skin.
Yeah, that's the problem of the mass spring system. So if we use the super helix model, it also consider the curvature and also can calculate the friction of the hair.
You mean the self-friction or the friction of the surface?
Both, you can do that. I mean, after you use the curvature, you can calculate the friction.
Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, if you just step outside for a moment.
Okay.